From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those championing market growth and anchoring the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. I'm Brandon Gray. I don't have Mike Maxson here with me today, but I did find another Mike. So we are in great shape. Yeah, you know, the best podcasts are the ones that Mike Maxson isn't on. So he'll never listen to this probably, so I can say all this when we can make fun of Mike for 30 minutes, or we can give some content. So got Mike Goldman. More about Mike here in just a second. I want to introduce him to everyone who's listening today and some of the cool things that he's been doing. But one quick announcement. We mentioned this last week. We're going to keep peppering you with it until you sign up, which is the Simple Numbers Summit, our first ever conference. It's going to take place November 9th through 11th in Austin, Texas. You can go to simplenumbersummit.com, sign up there, learn all about it. We're really excited. Like I said, we've been talking it up and mentioning it. Space is limited. We've already got folks registering, so go ahead and reserve your spot for that. If you get any questions, you can get in touch with me, message me on LinkedIn. But hopefully, if you go to simplenumbersummit.com, most all those questions are there in the FAQ section. All right. So shifting gears here a little bit, let me introduce to everybody Mike Goldman. So Mike works with some of our clients, in particular one that I work with. Mike's been working with them for like a decade, and I'd always heard about this guy. So we're on the calls and the client's talking about him, this and this and this. And we finally were introduced and just really hit it off. So the things that he works on, in particularly with leadership teams, falls right into Simple Numbers and our strategy around labor efficiency and what have you there. And so very akin in our thinking. Mike's a heavy hitter. He's got 3 books. So one is on the USA Today bestseller list, The Strength of Talent. So you want to check that out, get the book. Mike also has a podcast called The Better Leadership Team Show. And I can give you some names here that will kind of give some background as to the level of folks he's worked with in the past. Focuses right now on entrepreneurs. So everybody listening today, you are his people. But just so you know, kind of some of the names that he's worked with in the past: IBM, Allstate, Vistage, WPO, Disney, Verizon, Chanel, Ralph Lauren. So there's some heavy hitters on there. So Mike's legit. He has credibility. So Mike, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our talk.
Yeah. So as you can kind of get, The Strength of Talent, the most current book Mike has authored. Breakthrough Leadership Teams, another one, Performance Breakthrough. We're going to be talking people and leadership teams today. And so I'll throw a thought out. We always talk about people, strategy, those kind of things. So with the companies that you've worked with and the experience that you've got, Mike, would you say it's accurate to say that great strategy can overcome mediocre people?
No.
That was simple.
No. and I'm not even going to explain. The answer is no. So it's a great question. And let me tell you why I give a real quick no answer. Is I believe, and I have seen, and I've been coaching and consulting for over 35 years. And I know I look much younger than that.
Definitely.
Old guy. So over 35 years. And my experience is that the number one driver of profit growth is people growth. Now, strategy is important. Of course, being in the right markets are important. New product and service introductions are important. But when I say the number one driver of profit growth is people growth, I say that because I have seen over all those years great strategies with the wrong people. And by the way, when I say wrong people, I'm including mediocre folks. We need better than mediocre folks. Great strategies with the wrong people fail every single time. Now, I also have companies I've worked with that have pretty good strategies, mediocre strategies, but they've got a great team. They've got the right people. And that great team figures it out. They could take a mediocre strategy and execute the hell out of it and make it work. Or more likely, take a mediocre strategy, zig and zag and learn and tweak it and make a great strategy out of it. So the common denominator is always people.
Agree 100%. As we look at labor efficiency for different companies and what have you, um, there's a very high correlation between high performers, high leadership teams, and I'll include entrepreneurs in that, in terms of skill set and what have you, and labor efficiency, obviously. And part of that, and I think, Mike, you might have some thoughts on this too. It's not linear when you look at the performance of high performers versus mediocre team members. The LER doesn't slightly go up. We see actually a hockey stick curve on that. So speak a little bit as to kind of what you've observed in the research you've done as to the performance between those two different groups.
Yeah, two different, one kind of more anecdotal and one research. And the anecdotal one is there's a great book called Uncontainable, written by a gentleman named Kip Tyndall, who is the founder and was CEO of the Container Store for many years. And I love his philosophy around people. It's 1 = 3. And exactly to your point, Brandon, 1 = 3 says one superstar performer equals the productivity of 3 mediocre performers. And I'm sure we've both seen, and as a listener, you've seen that there are parts of your organization where it's more like 1 = 5 or 1 = 10.
Right.
Anybody on your senior leadership team, the impact they have cascading down and out through the organization, a great leader versus a mediocre leader is probably 5x or 10x in productivity. A great salesperson, I've seen those folks be 5x mediocre salespeople. Great software engineers might be 10x mediocre software engineers. So that's all anecdotal that we've seen. But then there's a study that Boston Consulting Group did that found that companies that they identified as talent magnets, which meant companies that score highest in leadership and talent development characteristics, they grew their revenues 2.2 times faster and their profits 1.5 times faster than the talent laggards, those companies that didn't have the right focus on leadership and talent development. So the return on investment of the right people is not only obvious, but the research confirms it.
And they don't cost a whole lot more. You get much more bang for the buck. I'll throw one thing in here, just relating this to the simple numbers world, and as we're working with clients and kind of the similarities that we see. So with all of our clients, when we're on our consulting calls, we're going to spend a considerable amount of time on forecasting, right? So it's great to look back, and we use looking back for targeting and some other things, but we need to know where we're headed. If everything is unicorns and rainbows in the past, but you've got tough times ahead, we need to know that as soon as possible to adjust. And so when we're on those calls, we'll say, we're pretty good at predicting expenses. The one thing we can't predict for your company is top line revenue, because we're not out selling it. We're not looking at your pipeline. We don't know these things. And so as we get on a call and we're doing the forecasting, it's amazing to see the correlation between profitability and companies who can accurately forecast and companies who can't. And that gets right back to the level and the quality of people that you have on your team. The folks who have high performers, they're on top of it. They know what it looks like. They know where they're going. They know where they're at, what they can produce, the reality of the situation. They're not afraid to say it, versus the others who are kind of like, well, I just have no idea.
And here's a piece of this that we might not think about. The obvious piece and the very important piece is you say, well, of course, if we have better people, we're going to be better able to reach our goals and our financial targets. Well, that just makes logical sense. But here's the other piece of it that I think makes it more powerful. When I work with my clients, and I don't know when you're listening to this, but when we're recording this, it's kind of during or right after kind of annual planning season for most companies. And most companies try to forecast the future. They say, well, what's 2026 look like? Well, what did 2025 look like? What do we think we're going to do differently? And therefore, what would 2026 look like? My experience is, while that makes logical sense, the result of that is very slow incremental improvements, which doesn't mean slow incremental growth. It may mean negative growth, because as you're making slow incremental improvements, your competition is making faster improvements and your clients are expecting more and more.
Right.
So what we want to do, and this is much easier to do if you have the right people, is when we look out in our 1-year plan, our 3-year plan, we don't want to forecast the future. We want to create the future. We don't want to say, where were we? What if we do these 3 things? Where are we going to end up? We want to say, you know what? 3 years from now, we want to be double the size. We want to increase our net profit from 10% to 20%. This is what we want to create. Now let's go figure out how we make that happen. And if you've got the right people on your team, they can think at that level, and they could think, all right, what are we going to do to double the business? What do we have to do, versus just starting from where we are and thinking incrementally? So it's a lot bigger than just great people could reach the goals. It impacts how you plan and how you think about the business.
Great point. Looking at that 3HAG, as we call it, and creating it. So hopefully what you've bought in now, you need great people, right? I mean, the data shows it, the experience shows it, your numbers probably show it. How do we know if we have the right people?
First thing we need to do, and it's the first place leaders fall down, is we need to set crystal clear expectations with our people and for ourselves. Now, what do I mean by expectations? It's expectations of performance. And in my model, and I call it the talent density system, is the framework that I use and that I I detail in the book, The Strength of Talent. There are 2 components of performance. One, of course, is productivity.
Right.
Productivity is not how hard and long you're working. You may be working long and hard because you're not very productive.
Exactly. Yep.
Productivity is about results.
No doubt.
That's one component. The second component is culture fit. You can think of culture fit as, is this person living and breathing our core values? You could simply, but very importantly, think of culture fit as, is this person making the people around them better? If they are, they're probably a great culture fit. If they're making the people around them worse, they're probably not a great culture fit. So number one, we need to set expectations around those 2 components. And then what we need to do, and I do this with my clients in something I call the quarterly talent assessment meeting, which is leaders in a room assessing performance of their direct reports together, is we need to look at those 2 components. And there is a very specific set of guidelines for how you score productivity and how you score culture fit. And those folks that are high enough in both productivity and culture fit, well, those are your high performing folks. Those folks that are not living your culture, those are low culture fit folks. Those folks that are not as productive as they need to be are what I call low producers. And then there's a whole bunch of folks in the middle that are your medium performing folks. But we need to assess. And again, in my world, we do that quarterly. The action should be every day that you're taking, but the assessment happens quarterly. And there needs to be a common language and a common set of guidelines. Leaders need to challenge each other on it. It is not simply let's create our assessments and secretly send them into HR so they can go in somebody's permanent record. The truth serum is having the leaders discuss those assessments together to make sure that we're holding each other accountable for the assessment. And then what's most important out of all of that is not the assessment. We're not assessing people so we can go tell people what performance category they're in. I actually think that's a really unproductive thing to do, and it causes a lot of defensiveness. But we do that so we can come up with the actions we need to take for our highest performers, for our medium performers, for our low producing and low culture fit folks. As leaders, we need to know exactly what actions we need to take, and we need to hold each other accountable for taking those actions and getting the results that we want, which is very simply more high performing folks, and less low and medium performing folks.
Well said. Can't say I disagree with any of that. So here's one that's kind of interesting. Um, we talked about, kind of having expectations, right? And as we love to say, you can't have accountability without expectations, right? Having the expectations, assessing them based on their productivity and their fit, how well they fit into your culture based on your core values and what have you. So you put people on that grid, and like you said, you're going to have some high performers and you're going to have some mediocre and you're going to have some low performers. Everybody's time's limited, right? We kind of have a running joke here in the office about entrepreneurs being so busy. It's like everybody, all right, everybody's busy. Okay. So do you spend your time on high performers? Do you spend your time coaching up mediocre performers? I think we all agree if you're low on that chart, you're probably not a fit at the organization you're in. So let's just exclude them for the time being. But kind of give the audience a little guidance there on which bucket do you pour into.
This is maybe the most important point coming out of all of this. And it's important because we have a limited amount of time. We're all busy. Things are always crazy. Things never calm down, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So we have to invest our time where we're going to get the greatest return. And it becomes so important because where as leaders we tend to naturally invest our time is the absolute wrong place to spend our time. What we naturally do, and notice I say we because I did the same thing for many years. What we naturally do is spend a whole bunch of time trying to fix our people that are broken, working
Right.
with our low performing folks because, number one, they're at an unacceptable level of performance. Of course,
Right.
we've got to go fix it. And number two, although it's frustrating, that's the easy place for us to focus. Because if you're a low performer, well, there's 15 things you're screwing up. All I have to do is prioritize the most important three and get to working with you
Right.
to do that. That again, that may be frustrating, but it's kind of the easy thing to think about. But think about it from a couple different perspectives. And I'm going to, something I call high performer math. And here's high performer math. And I'm going to pick a salesperson just because it's the most measurable and obvious thing we do. You got a salesperson that's bringing in a high performing salesperson, bringing in $1 million every month. And then you got a low performing salesperson that's bringing in 100,000 a month. You can choose where you spend your time. If I spend time, I could either spend time with my low performing salesperson and help them increase by 20%, or I could spend time with my high performing salesperson and help them increase by 20%. Think about the numbers. Where am I getting the greater return on investment? 20% of 100,000 is 20,000. So I'm
even in Alabama. Yeah.
Even in Alabama. So I'm going to get a $20,000 return. Whereas if I work with the $1 million salesperson to improve by 20%, that's a $200,000 return. Where should I be spending my time? It's obvious. And if that's not obvious enough, here's a second way to look at it. When we overinvest, as I think we do in our low performing folks, what happens? We work day in and day out with these folks that are either low in productivity or low in culture fit or both. We work with them day in and day out. Do they improve? Well, I would say let's be optimistic. Some number of them will improve. But are they going to go from low performing to high performing? I would say 95% of the time that's not happening. But let's say they improve, they're going to move up slightly. And let's say they go from unacceptable performance to now they're acceptable. So your low performers are going to improve a little bit. Great. What happens when you ignore your high performing folks and you say, thank God for Brandon. He's a superstar. I don't have to worry about him. I can go focus on my low performing folks. Two things are going to happen. One is if Brandon, you're one of my high performing folks, and the best you get from me is, Brandon, keep up the good work. Well, if you're not growing with me, you may choose to grow with someone else.
Right.
So number one, you might leave. Number two, let's say you don't leave and you stay. Are you going to go, when I ignore you, are you going to go from high performing to low performing? Probably not. You've got some natural talent. You're really good at what you do, but I would say your performance is going to dip. If I'm not challenging you, if I'm not re-recruiting you, if I'm not recognizing you, if I'm not raising the bar, increasing your responsibility, your performance is going to dip. So when we focus on our low performing folks and less on our high performing folks, what we get is higher low performers and lower high performers.
Wow.
And if you picture that in your mind, you wind up with this really, not so amazing thing called mediocrity.
Yeah.
And that's not getting you anywhere, and that's not helping you sleep at night. So we need to overinvest in our highest performing folks. And we need to, let's work with the low performing folks. But man, my philosophy is fire fast, hire slow. Let's coach them up or decide we've got to coach them out.
And I would say in the current marketplace, if you're mediocre, you're short for this world. You're not going to be around long. It is just that vicious. Great stuff. So one more question here. So you kind of put all this together, the groups we need to work on, where they fall, what have you, the accountability. What's kind of the rhythm, the metric, and what have you as to kind of evaluating and looking at this? So is it, once a year in their annual review? Is it sprinkled throughout the year? Kind of what do you guys recommend there?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about rhythm and metric because a great question is they're both important. From a rhythm standpoint, number one, I believe annual performance reviews are the worst invention ever created in business.
Amen.
And if you're thinking, well, that's why we do quarterly performance reviews, congratulations, you do a crappy process 4 times a year. There is no reason we should be waiting to have the important conversations for 12 months or 3 months. That's just nuts. I mean, we don't do that in Little League baseball with when we're trying to coach a player to, but yet we do that in business. So number one, it's not about annual or quarterly performance reviews. I do believe from an assessment standpoint and from a leadership accountability standpoint, I do have my leaders assessing performance and holding each other accountable for taking actions to improve performance. That's a once a quarter thing from a leadership team standpoint. But the rhythm in having the difficult conversations or even the real positive, constructive conversations with your folks and taking massive action with your people to coach them, develop them, make the difficult conversation to coach up or coach out. That's got to be happening every day and every week. And one of the things I talk about in my book is a very specific format and structure for weekly one-on-one meetings. There's a coaching meeting, which is all about, the agenda is your direct reports agenda. Then there's an accountability and feedback, which is, as a leader, your agenda. And again, in the book, I go through details of how that works. So the rhythm of action has got to be every day. There's got to be weekly meetings where you're doing what you would normally do in an annual or a quarterly performance review. That should be happening weekly. The assessment happens quarterly. So there's a rhythm there. I also want to talk about the metric, which is so important. Is one of the first things I said when we kicked off the podcast was this idea that the number one driver of profit growth is people growth.
Right.
And while most will nod their heads and go, yeah, that makes sense, there's a problem with that statement. And the problem is there's this cliche that you can't manage what you don't measure.
Right.
And it's a cliche because it's mostly true.
Uh-huh.
Well, number one driver of profit growth is people growth. Do we measure profit growth?
We better.
Yes, we do. And if you're a leader listening to this, you can probably tell us down to the 10th of a percent how you're doing compared to plan and how you're doing compared to last year. Check, got it. But if I said, how you doing on people growth? The answer I get is stuff like, well, we're pretty good. We're almost caught up with our annual performance reviews. Like, we seem to be on the right track. Those aren't measures. How do we drive improvement? How do we hold each other accountable to pretty good? So we need a measure. So what I've created is something called the Talent Density Indicator, or the TDI. And very simply, but very powerfully, it's when you evaluate your team or your company, it's the percent of high performing team members minus the percent of low performing team members, whether they're low producing or low culture fit. When you do that, you wind up with a number that's somewhere between negative 100% if you've got all low performing individuals, and positive 100% if you've got all high performing individuals. Wherever that number is, that's your benchmark. And you've got work to do. If you're at negative 40%, you got some work to do coaching up or coaching out some of your lowest performers. You got to make sure to go re-recruit your high performing folks that are there. If you're at 80 or 100%, which sounds great, that might mean you're sandbagging on your productivity goals if you're that high. But if it doesn't, let's say you're doing great, you got some work to do to go work with your highest performers, to re-recruit them, to challenge them, to raise the bar. So that number becomes a benchmark, and then you can then look at it quarter after quarter. And to me, that becomes kind of the mother of all leading indicators of your business. If your TDI is going up, trust me, you're going to see that return on investment, and your top and bottom line is going to go up.
Love having a metric. It's the simple numbers way, right? And as Mike's going through this, I can't help but recall a client of ours. So they're growing, and their goal is to get 10 million in revenue. That's where they're headed, right? So they'd grow and they get to about 10, and then they'd fall back to about 6 or 7. It didn't work. We couldn't sustain it. And so a year up, a year or two later, and they grow and they get to about 10.5, and they can't sustain it, and they fall back to like 7 or 8. And finally the entrepreneur goes, something's wrong. And he starts looking into some of these things Mike's talking about, and he comes to this conclusion: I don't have the right team to sustain. It's just that in their company at that level, it was just a different ceiling that their leadership team had to have, a different skill set they had to have, a different level of productivity. And once he kind of finally figured out, the problem is the talent on the team, they got to 30 million. So I wish he could have been connected with Mike years ago, because it would have saved about 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears, not to mention all the profit that could have been had if we've been able to get there the first time instead of the third time.
Yeah, and they're tough decisions. What got you here is not going to get you there. What made you a $10 million number? And sometimes that means having real tough conversations with folks that have been with you for a long time, but they're just not the right folks to get you from 10 to 20 or 20 to 50.
Yeah. I mean, they had to part ways with some folks that have been with them since day one. And that was not fun. Those were tough conversations. So, well, Mike, we're right up at about time here. We could talk all day about this. And so we're going to have Mike back on a future episode, because we have just scratched the surface of, the value that Mike can bring in terms of helping entrepreneurs. And so if you find yourself in that position to where you're trying to grow and it's just not working, or you're growing and it's like, man, there are a lot of problems here, but you can't really sometimes put your finger on exactly what the problem is, you need to talk to Mike, because he's got the tools, he's got the experience. Obviously he has the credibility that can kind of work with you to get you through that. So Mike, 3 books: Breakthrough Leadership Team, Performance Breakthrough, and Strength of Talent. Tell everybody, hopefully pique the interest of some folks. Tell everybody a little bit more about, the work you do with entrepreneurs, how they get in touch with you, some of the resources you have and what have you there.
Yeah, so I've got the books. I call myself a leadership team coach. So for a number of my clients, I work with their with the CEO and the leadership team throughout the year, helping them with their quarterly planning, their annual planning. I coach the CEO one-on-one. So with some clients, like the one you mentioned, where I think we're in year 11 at working together, I coach the leadership team. Separate from that, I also do workshops. I have something called the Talent Density Launchpad to get folks kicked off in this idea we're talking about today that's in the book, The Strength of Talent. So there's also one-off workshops. And to find me, my website is mike-goldman.com. The new book, the USA Today bestseller that I'm super proud of, is you can get that anywhere you get your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but you could also go to strengthoftalent.com, and there you could order the book and also get some kind of goodie downloads along with the book as well.
Nice. Check it out, guys. No doubt about it. So, Mike, thank you for your time today. This has been great. Like I said, we're going to have to do it again. Everybody reach out to Mike and take advantage of those resources. Reminder, Simple Number Summit, November 9th through 11th. Go to simplenumbersummit.com to sign up for that. Look forward to seeing you there. And until next time, for Mike Goldman, I'm Brandon Gray. Let's keep everything profitable.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review. This podcast is brought to you by CRI Simple Numbers LLC, a division of CRI Capital Group LLC, and a subsidiary of CRI Advisors LLC. CRI is the trusted brand under which Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC, the CPA firm, and CRI Advisors LLC, along with its subsidiaries, deliver professional services. Please note, Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC is a licensed independent CPA firm offering attest services, whereas CRI Advisors LLC and its subsidiaries specialize in providing tax and business consulting services. These entities operate within an alternative practice structure as defined by the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct and comply fully with applicable laws, regulations, and professional standards. Ready to simplify your business finances and drive growth? Explore valuable resources, books, and tools designed for entrepreneurs and small businesses at simplenumberscri.com.